As the president jokingly tweeted this morning, not much to talk about. We had a jam-packed week of 9 witnesses testifying before the House Intel Committee this week in week 2 of the public hearings of the impeachment inquiry. And we are lucky enough to bring in Chris Wallace, who is live in Washington, D.C. with us this morning. We have this new reporting of the former FBI lawyer possibly altering a FISA application about surveilling a former Trump advisor. We have Chief Justice Roberts putting a temporary hold on the president's taxes and the release there. We have the first woman chairing the Oversight Committee, the 5th Democratic debate. We also have Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu indicted now for fraud and bribery. Can't get to any of it because we have this monolith of the impeachment inquiry. Some 40 hours of testimony, breakneck speed here. We have to move at the same pace, trying to condense this into less than 4 minutes, Chris. So the general consensus of the witnesses here is that this meeting at the White House between Presidents Trump and Zelensky was predicated on announcing these investigations into the Bidens. The same witnesses saying they now believe that the aid was also contingent, but not one of them saying they know this because the president told them directly that was the case. So in what you've seen over the last 5 days, do they have enough to push forward to the Judiciary Committee, or is Devin Nunes correct when he says we're no closer to impeachment than we were the night of the election?
No, I think there's no question. I mean, in the end, it's less a question of evidence than it's a question of votes, because ultimately impeachment is a political act in the House, not a legal act. It's not a legal trial. So it seems pretty clear that the Democratic majority believes that there is enough evidence and they're going to proceed. They'll send the House Intelligence Committee. The Democrats will send their report on what they saw and what they believe they proved, and Republicans will send their minority report on what they believe wasn't proved. The Judiciary Committee, also controlled by Democrats, will vote articles of impeachment, write articles of impeachment, then it'll go to the House. Unless there is a dramatic change, it appears that this will pass before Christmas, impeaching President Trump, the 3rd president in history to be formally impeached by the House, on basically a straight party line vote. Just Democrats voting for it, all Republicans voting against it. Then it goes to the Senate, probably early next year, for a trial.
And then on Sunday, I know you have Congressman Eric Swalwell not only sitting on the Intel Committee, but also the Judiciary Committee responsible for drafting these articles of impeachment. Did Chairman Schiff give us kind of the breadcrumbs of what these articles could look like? He'd mentioned witness intimidation about these tweets from the president and the White House about Ivanovich, Vindman, and Williams. He also mentioned obstruction for blocking witnesses, withholding documents by the State Department and the White House, repeatedly saying bribery, that's specific in the Constitution as an impeachable offense. And then we have this broad subjective term of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Yeah, I think that you'll see probably, and again, we're predicting the future, but I think you'll see 3 or 4 articles of impeachment. One will be bribery. Kind of a tough case, because usually bribery, and I think when the founders wrote it back in the 1700s, they meant the idea of a foreign leader bribing, or a foreign entity bribing the president. Remember, it was just a young republic at that point. What we're talking about here is the allegation that President Trump, in effect, bribed the Ukrainians, saying, you know, if you want this aid, if you want a White House meeting, both of which are important to you, you've got to give me what I want, which is investigations into Democrats. I think there'll be a general article of abuse of power, that he abused the power of his office for personal gain, and then something that basically says you blocked our investigation, which could be obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, or whatever. But again, you know, this is a largely political act, and it goes to the House straight majority vote. The Democrats have the majority. You know, there's a real impact for their having won the midterm election in 2018. So let's assume that they vote articles of impeachment, then goes to the Senate. And it's not just a question of a majority. Republicans have a majority. It has to be a supermajority, 67 votes, 2/3, to remove the president. The founders wanted it to be a really big, high barrier that you had to surpass if you're going to remove the president of the United States. So all 47 Democrats would have to vote against it. Possible, not certain. Then you'd have to have 20 Republicans who would jump ship. And at this point, there isn't a single Republican in the Senate who has indicated he will jump ship, let alone 20. So, you know, we kind of think we know how this movie ends. Impeachment, yes. Removal, no. And the election and the political process goes on.
Now, I unfortunately only get a few minutes with Chris Wallace, but you get an entire hour with my friend here every weekend right here on Fox 26 for Fox News Sunday. That is happening Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, where you have a full hour to spend time with him. I thank you for your insight, my friend, and as always, I just wish that we had more time.
Well, thank you. Let me just say, in addition to Swalwell, we're either going to have a top White House guest or a top congressional Republican. So we'll be fair and balanced as always. Thank you very much, Lena.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, 38 minutes after the hour, we'll be right back.